Let's go to a former Trump administration trade advisor now, Kellyanne Shaw. It's good to see you, Kellyanne. Let's start off with your reaction to what Donald Trump said this morning, and perhaps you and us too, given that you're former, you're probably trying to work this out as well. How should we understand this? Is it 10% across the board for all of Australian imports into America?
Yeah, and I am digesting this information along with all of you. What it appears to be is a 10% global baseline tariff for everyone and everything. It's not clear whether there are going to be any exceptions or exclusions for certain products yet. I would imagine once we see the executive order, we'll see that. But it looks like from the list of 75 countries with their corresponding tariff rates that the president had behind him when he was giving his talk in the Rose Garden just now, that about 41 countries have tariff rates anywhere from 50% to 15%, and then everybody else has this 10% tariff, and that's where Australia sits. So by comparison, Australia did better than any other country in the world, but certainly this is 10% more than Australian exporters are used to paying.
So what's the American view, and perhaps your view too, on our beef? Because Australian beef was singled out by the president about an hour ago now. America takes about $4 billion worth of Australian beef. We take none because of mad cow disease concerns. Do you think that was fair?
Yeah, and I should say multiple administrations have highlighted Australia's discrimination of U.S. beef exports over the last several years. The president held up what was called the National Trade Estimate. It's this report on all of the unfair trade practices that the U.S. Trade Representative put out earlier this week. Beef has been highlighted for many, many years. So I'm not surprised that the president highlighted beef specifically, but he also listed motorcycles and a number of other products and tariffs, including dairy from Canadians, that he is concerned about. But when it comes to the issues and the products that have the most political juice behind them in the United States, it's usually agriculture.
Right. I mean, but aren't we right to have concerns about American beef, considering there are biosecurity concerns?
Well, as an American in America, I eat American beef without concern of those issues. So I would push back on your question, but every country has their own regulatory system, their food safety systems. But I do think there's political concern here in the United States that Australia is just being too restrictive.
Okay, well, that's a fair enough response from your part. So what are some of your biggest companies do now? You know, our beef goes to McDonald's in America. It goes to Burger King, Chipotle, all these kinds of places as well. What do you expect them to do? Would they still buy Australian beef? Perhaps this is a question for them. Or, do they just have to pay more now or find alternatives?
Yeah, it depends on the price sensitivity of some of these products when you're looking at beef or any other product that is now subject to tariffs. And it could be a combination of things. It could be that the exporters will lower their prices to try to take advantage of some of that market share. It could be that U.S. consumers pay more. It could be that there's some sort of splitting in between. But here's what I'll say. I think that all of these actions today really do tee up an opportunity for negotiations. The U.S. has complained about Australia's restrictive policies towards beef for years and years. There's now another opportunity for the governments to sit down and see if they can work something out so that maybe there is some relief on a reciprocal basis.
Okay, so what do you mean? Just elaborate on that point then, negotiations. Are you saying that we keep talking, we can bring that down?
Yeah, I think the president has been very clear about this for weeks when he talks about reciprocity, and he says we're going to treat them the way they treat us. And when I was in the first Trump administration, I often heard him say, I'll go to zero if they do, in the same breath that he would complain about some of these unfair trade practices, these high tariffs and other non-tariff barriers. So I do think that he's open to a negotiated outcome here. But his point is that if the U.S. does nothing, our trading partners aren't going to unilaterally, out of the goodness of their heart, lower their barriers. So that's why I see this as the beginning of a negotiation with many countries around the world.
Yeah, well, I think on beef, biosecurity here, it's strict for good reason. So I think that's a non-starter. But anyway, no doubt negotiations will continue. From an investment point of view, do you have any concerns that investment or potential investment from countries into the United States would be hit here, that various countries would look for alternatives now?
Yeah, and working with the private sector now, what I can say is that most companies are in this wait and see posture. They're not quite clear where all of this is going in terms of these reciprocal tariffs, these sectoral tariffs, some of these IEPA and national security tariffs, and they really are waiting for the dust to settle. But what the administration has said on the other side is that tariffs are a part and parcel of their larger economic package to incentivize domestic investment, including tax cuts, deregulation, energy diversity. And so I think this will play out over the coming months and we'll see what happens. But clearly, the administration is interested in these big investments. They're not interested in cutting off trade with all of our trading partners. So I do think that this is a work in progress and we'll continue to be talking about this for the next several weeks and months.
So there has been a bump in the S&P today. This happened, the markets closed before the actual announcement, so there might be a bigger shift tomorrow. Just take us behind the scenes, and you've worked in the Trump administration before. What would things have been like? How frantic would negotiations have been in the days leading up to today?
Yeah, and I had a lot of questions about this from various clients going into the weekend of, when are they going to make a decision? The president will almost always make his decision at the last minute. Part of that is this negotiating strategy of ambiguity. There's always a little bit of drama in the run up to a tariff announcement. And this is the largest single tariff announcement in modern history. So I am not surprised that this was closely held and the president didn't announce his plans until 4 p.m. today in the Rose Garden. But clearly a lot of thought went into this. There have been robust debates. There were 23 separate economic reports being drafted by various economic officials. And so there has been a tremendous amount of deliberation about what to do. And this announcement is the outcome of all of that work.
And how do you think this plays out in America? I mean, obviously it'll play well to his base, but how do the Democrats, for instance, react to this?
Yeah, and this is really where American politics gets a bit weird because about 10 years ago, Democrats were the pro-tariff party and Republicans were the free trade party. And that has really been stood on its head. And you have just as many Democrats who are in favor of using tariffs as a tool as you do Republicans and Democrats who may be a little bit more skeptical about an aggressive use of tariffs. But what I can say is that 60% of Americans think that trade has been better for other countries than it has been for the United States. And so I think you see support from the American people about going after some of these unfair trading practices, but at the same time, there's a little bit of skepticism about what these tariffs will mean. And so I think we'll see that play out over the next few days as we begin to digest what this action was. Again, there's still a lot of questions like whether these tariffs stack on top of each other, whether there are exceptions and exclusions. And once we see where that dust settles, we'll see where the approval ratings for it go.
So do you think, when it comes to, say, a country like Australia and the United States, obviously we're key trading partners. Can America be trusted in our relationship going forward? I know people are going to talk about that word trust now.
Yeah, I mean, just putting it in perspective, though, Australia fared better than any other country on Earth. Right. So Australia got off easy from the perspective of the administration. But nevertheless, I understand from your perspective, there were no tariffs and now there are 10% tariffs. Right. Yeah. So the relationship has changed. That said, I don't think it sort of underlies like a lack of trust on the U.S. side towards working with Australia. I think it signals very much an interest and a willingness and a trust in that relationship and partnership. Okay. But these are economic issues that the president is dealing with separately from the national security relationship.
Yeah, no doubt. I think we understand the point here that America, at the end of the day, has to look after itself first. But really good to talk to you again. Thank you so much. Great insight there. And we'll chat to you again soon.